We are in Clearwater Beach. My name is Monk Rowe, and I'm very pleased to have pianist and arranger Johnny Varro with me this morning. Talk about your career in music.
My favorite subject.
Yeah. And congratulations on your the Swing 7 CD, which is a great
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
production.
That really makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this something you've had in the back of your mind for a while to do that size group?
Well, I've been writing, arranging for years and years, and never really took it too serious until I happened to be working at a jazz camp in Sacramento, out of Sacramento, and working with a bunch of kids trying to influence their jazz feeling and careers, and not too much was happening with them improvisation-wise. So I thought, well, let me write a couple of things and see how that works. And as I wrote stuff, and they began to realize the harmonies were interesting, and it kind of put it all together for them, and they really enjoyed what I did. And I thought to myself, well, why don't I start writing some of this stuff for myself and put a little band together. And I started writing arrangement number 1. I'm up to about 100 now.
Wow.
With the Swing 7. But these are all tunes and styles that I've always loved through the years. The John Kirby, and of course Duke Ellington, his music. And I've had a ball with it. It's been great. Volume 3 is about to come out any day now. And I was hoping to be out for the festival.
Oh,
here,
right.
but it never showed up. So we'll see. It'll be out soon.
Is it conceivable to keep a band together these days as a working unit?
Well, I don't keep a band together because it's hard to keep the. I keep my book together.
Right. Okay.
Wherever I go, if I'm in New York, I pick up the New York players.
Yeah.
Which is usually the guys that are on the CDs. In Florida here, I have a Florida band, and when I go out to L.A., I pick up a bunch of guys from L.A. And so, you know, as long as the book is together, and these guys can all play here, there, everywhere. You know, as long as they can read and have a sense of improvisation, the band's usually good. But the New York boys, that's prime.
I guess there's a reason for that. Everybody seems to end up there, at least for part of their career.
Well, look at the personnel. My God, you know, these are top players.
How much time would you get, or did you get, in the studio to do a production like this? I mean, you've got 14 cuts on there.
Yeah. We did it, including rehearsal, 2 days.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. Before this last CD that we did, we used to get together the day before and rehearse, and then come in the studio the next day and play, and then for 2 days. But this time we decided to rehearse on the spot. And we found that we had the tape running even during the rehearsal as we ran first. And these guys could read so well that it just, even the first take on rehearsal, we used several of those.
Yeah.
And once in a while we say, no, let's do another one. But I don't like to do too many. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's been in the, you know, when you look back in the history of jazz recordings, they're usually done fairly quickly.
Well, I think it should be. I don't think, for example, I did a thing with Ruby about 2 or 3 years ago, and one take right through. The whole thing. I mean, no second chances. You better do it right the first time, because Ruby doesn't like to do it more than once either. Mistakes and all, if there's a little slur here or something, go with it. And that's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
It is spontaneous. That's what jazz is, anyway.
Right. Let me take you back, if you can. You grew up in Brooklyn?
I was born in Brooklyn.
Did you grow up in New York, or?
You mean playing-wise, or?
No, just as a child.
Oh, yeah. I was born in Brooklyn, born in Bensonhurst and raised in, I was born in Flatbush and raised in Bensonhurst area.
Yeah.
Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst. And
can you recall the first kinds of music that entered your...
Well, yeah, it was my first studies. When I was 10 years old, we had a piano in the house, and the girl next door was taking piano lessons, and Mom didn't want to be left out. She says, why don't you take some piano lessons, which I didn't really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got into it, I found it came easy. I kept skipping ahead to the next lesson. And before you knew it, the teacher was giving me extra stuff. I bypassed this girl and that guy and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And it came pretty easy, and the mechanics of it was, I found quite interesting.
Yeah. Did you find a point growing up that you started to think about this as a career?
Yeah, when I started doing lousy in high school.
Uh-huh.
After maybe I was about 15, 16, I'd still been studying piano, but my jazz influence came into me
Mm-hmm.
through my father, who loved jazz music. Could have been a musician, wasn't. He had all the instincts. And he used to take me to jazz concerts. I was just talking about that to someone earlier. The first concert I attended was at Carnegie Hall. Eddie Condon had a big, massive jazz party right on stage there. He had 4 pianos, 4 grand pianos, 4 basses, maybe 3 or 4 drummers, all lined up. And of course, they were small groups at first, and then this was the finale with all the players. But the informality of it, I just couldn't understand. He's walking around the stage while the guys are playing, and he's chatting with this guy, and he's pointing to this guy to take a solo. You next, and he's going, and then he'd get on the microphone and mumble something.
Not your typical Carnegie Hall.
Well, you know, Eddie was that kind of a character, and I couldn't quite fathom. I couldn't figure this out. And at the end of the concert, my dad asked me, "How did you enjoy it?" I said, "It was all right. It's just kind of confusing." I was maybe 14, 15. Mm-hmm. He took me to another one later on. There was just one band playing. And it was, I forget where it was, the Ziegfeld Theater, I think. Mm-hmm. And there was a bunch of Condonites, you know.
Yeah, Condonites.
And I caught it, and they started playing, and all of a sudden I got a chill. The sound of it, the brassiness, it was so exciting to hear that raw sound coming through. And I said, gee, this is good. This is good. This I understood more than the other. Now I understand the other more so now, but at the time it was kind of confusing. And I thought, this might be something I might want to do. I was doing lousy in high school. I mean, my interest wasn't there. I had two classes I was good at: the music appreciation class and phys ed, sports or whatever, you know, baseball and things like that. I was pretty good at. But the regular curriculum, no, it wasn't for me. And I barely graduated, but my interest in music, my teacher was very instrumental in helping me. Mm-hmm. She was an ex-concert pianist, retired, and she'd give me a lesson, and I'd do the lesson, perform it for her, whatever she gave me the week before. And at the end of the lesson, she'd say, okay, now play something for me. And I said, I'd play some Sweet Lorraine or something to that effect, you know. And she sat back and loved it. She loved that I was doing that. She did, you know, a lot of teachers in those days would have resented that and said, how dare you? No, she was pretty cool about that.
And how did you learn Sweet Lorraine? From sheet music?
Sheet music.
Yeah.
Originally sheet music, and sheet music had the chord symbols and the melody and all that, the accompaniment, and I played with the accompaniment and all, but I never knew what those figures were up above. Nobody ever told me. You know, I had no theory, never had theory in my life. And finally one day my dad came home, he came home with a bunch of books, the Win books, W-I-N-N, how to play ragtime, how to play breaks and endings, and all that sort of different things. And in the back of the book, there were chords with the notes on them. And I said, aha, that's what this C7 means. And it wound up that I would write in little things in the sheet music in pencil and write in little fills, and then I'd apply them to different chords and different situations until I had them memorized where I could just, just play it. And the light bulb went off, and I felt really great about it.
That's cool.
It was really good. It opened up a whole world for me.
Uh-huh.
And about that time, I said, hey, this is a way to make a living, possibly. You know, I started getting wedding jobs.
Yeah.
And wedding jobs didn't pay very much. Paid anywhere from $12 to $15 for the night. But in those days, it wasn't too bad. Which those days sounds like the Middle Ages.
Well, right. But you were still, what, still in your teens?
I was, about that time, it might have been 17, 18.
Yeah. So, $15 a night.
Yeah, well, that was all right.
Not too bad. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. And what would the band consist of? You know, quartets and so forth?
Trumpet, tenor player, usually a clarinet tenor. Maybe no bass, guitar probably, drum, and piano. Small groups, you know. And we play the typical wedding songs and the Miami Beach rumba. And
Well, those can be good proving grounds because you got to learn to do just about everything, right?
Well, yeah. Oh, listen, it was good. It was great, you know. Some of the players were good. Some of them were pretty bad, too. But, you know, you learned. You grew that way. Right.
Well, your father certainly set you on a definite path, and it's nice memory.
He was great.
Yeah.
We used to go to Eddie Condon's. He used to take me to Eddie Condon's when I was still young in my teenage years. He'd take me to Condon's, and we'd sit up in the balcony. I was looking at the Ken Burns film the other day, and they showed a shot of Condon's. And you'd see the balcony. It was taken from the balcony from here, but we used to sit over here, and I'd look down on the piano. Piano keyboard would be laid out there. And I'd watch Joe Sullivan and Gene Schrader and all the piano players that played, James P. Johnson, and all those guys who used to play with Eddie. And got a great education just listening to these guys play and how they played and how they approached the music, subtly or unsubtly.
They probably didn't have much music sitting in front of them.
Oh, no.
Either, did they?
No, not at all. No, I couldn't understand that at first either. But then I got to realize, you learned the songs. After I learned my first song, I said, that's how they do it. Learn the song and then go from there.
Yeah. That whole scene that as you said, Condonites.
Yeah.
What was it that made that almost a style in itself, the way those guys played, or just their personalities?
Well, the informality of it was very important because it was loose and relaxed. About the time, well, I'm going ahead of myself, but I'm going way ahead of myself. I don't know how slow you want me to go on this thing. But I did work at Nick's for a while. And Nick's with Phil Napoleon, and later on with Pee Wee Irwin. And this is in the 50s, mid-50s. And Nick's was a very formal place. The music was very strict, and they wanted you to play a certain style, 2-beat more or less. And don't swing too much. Really. I mean, the bands were very precise and good groups. I mean, hell of a good bunch of bands, good players too. That's when I first met Kenny DeVerne with Phil Napoleon with Pee Wee Irwin at Nick's. And later on, I worked, about 2 years later, I got a call from Eddie Condon to work his saloon as a soloist. Well, actually as a duet with Buzzy Jutin on drums and myself. And I noticed the informality of that place was so much looser and easier going, and they weren't worried about whether you're having a drink or stuff like that. You know, it was, so some of us abused that privilege too.
Well, I've read, of course, that he was a major league drinker. Why is
his whole band was?
His whole band? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the guys, most of the guys were.
Is there a reason that jazz is associated with that? I mean, is it as simple as the fact that it's played in bars?
Yeah, I guess that was the main reason. I don't know, it kind of relaxed you, I guess. If you have a couple of snorts, you're able to go out and throw caution to the winds and say, oh, I'm going to hit that high C, or I'm going to do that run a little faster, or something to that effect. Strangely enough, a lot of musicians are insecure to begin with. I shouldn't say a lot, because I'm speaking for myself. I felt insecure at the time. I wasn't sure that I'm qualified for to be playing with all these guys. So maybe a couple of drinks would loosen me up, and I'd feel better about it, the whole thing myself, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes that would hurt you, too. If I did a recording when I was having too much to drink, it wouldn't turn out as good as I thought it was at the time. So you had to be careful about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trial and error.
I read somewhere that you had sat in with or played for Willie the Lion Smith. Is that right?
Willie became one of my first mentors at the Central Plaza. Now I'm going back a couple of years to when I was about 19 or 20. These sessions were run in lower New York City, in the Lower East Side. There was the Stuyvesant Casino and the Central Plaza. There were two big halls, and on Friday and Saturday night, each hall would have their own jam sessions. One was run by Bob Maltz, the other was run by Jack Crystal, who was Billy Crystal's dad.
Oh, right.
That's why Billy's got such a great influence on the music of today. I mean, he just loved the times. He'd be running around the hall there, this little kid, you know, and he was just absorbing all this stuff.
Yeah. Didn't his father sell records or something, too?
He was the manager of the Commodore Music Shop on 42nd Street. And that's where I first met him. I was about 14 or 15 when I used to go in there and buy my first LP, not LPs, what am I saying, 78s.
Yeah.
They cost $1 in those days. And that was pretty, $1.03. And I met a lot of musicians going there checking out their own records and going through the file. Bud Freeman, for one.
Really?
Funny guy.
Yeah.
But, you know, I got to admire all these players, and eventually, in time, in the future, I wound up playing with most of them. And that was the big kick for me and the big thrill, to admire these guys for years and then become their contemporaries.
Did you have to work non-music jobs on the way up?
I did one gig. I did one job that lasted about 6 months. I'd fallen in love with a girl when I was about 19 years old, some gal in Brooklyn, and she didn't like the idea that I was playing my weddings and doing that on weekends. And she'd be by herself, and so I decided that maybe I should get a career, you know, dumb kid in love at 19. So I got a job in an office and did that for a while, and found out that I was making more on the weekends playing those two wedding jobs or whatever it was than I was with the whole week. I mean, geez, I was making like $30 a week, taking the subway back and forth every day, and it was ridiculous. I mean, those were bad wages in those days, but I guess they were average. But it was minimum wage, the $30.
Yeah.
But I'd wind up making $35, $40 on the weekends. And say, hey, what am I doing? Knocking myself out. And decided that I wasn't in love. No, this isn't love.
I guess she didn't become your wife.
No. No, it's an old story. That's another story.
Yeah,
we'll do that in another interview.
Part 2.
Part 4.
Oh, my. Well, see, you said that this is the early 50s?
Well, I'm kind of jumping around a lot. I don't mean to, but the love romance was around 1950.
Yeah.
And then working at Nick's was 54, 55, 56.
Right.
And then Condon's was 57. And I was there for about 8 months playing intermission with Buzzy Druten. And the band consisted of Wild Bill, Peanuts, Cuddy Cutshall, George Wetling, Gene Schrader, and Arvell Shaw, maybe, or Walter Page, one of the two.
Really? Walter Page?
On bass, yeah. I'm sorry, Leonard Gaskin. Leonard Gaskin was on bass there.
Okay.
And then that whole band went to England, was invited to England to do a tour. So then they got Jimmy McPartland in there, Pee Wee Russell, Vic Dickinson, Buzzy and I went on piano and drums, and that's when we had Walter Page on bass. And they were away for about 2 months. So we had a ball playing there. And of course on Tuesday evenings there was intermission. It was guest night.
Yeah.
And I bring people like Bobby Hackett in, or Billy Butterfield, or Bud Freeman. Bud was always there. He was always hanging out there, whether he was invited there or not. He was always hanging out with his buddies. Jimmy and he were very close. And I got into the fold that way.
Yeah.
And before you knew it, I was invited and got calls from these guys to play. I got a gig in Long Island to play something here, and I started moving around, and it was going well for me.
What would happen on a gig like that if someone called a tune and you didn't know it?
I had several experiences with that. In the beginning, I felt hesitant about saying I didn't know a song. I thought I could get by it. I'd get by with it. And a lot of them you could kind of fake and figure out, but once in a while you'd get one where there'd be some strange changes in it. And it'd be embarrassing. I was very embarrassed about that, and I decided I've got to learn these songs. So I started to increase my repertoire. I tried to keep a little step ahead of all these guys. Before they called them out, I'd know them. So it's rarely that I get stuck, but still today, even today,
Sure.
Somebody will call a song, wait. But now I don't feel funny about saying, hey, wait, no. Don't
Better
do that.
we do something
Yeah,
else.
let's do something else.
Yeah. I guess I'm curious, because there wasn't jazz books like today. So did you just like keep your ears open and say, oh, I hear someone playing this tune and I don't know it. I better learn that one.
Well, there was a fake book that did come out around the 40s. It was the first fake book. I still have it.
Really?
I still have it at home. God, the thing is falling apart. But it was illegal to have it because these people the songwriters were getting no royalties out of this.
Yeah.
So it was a legal thing. I paid $20 for it then. And I treasured it. And all the tunes were in it. And so I got to learn a lot of songs through this book. If I heard a song being played that I didn't know, I'd go home and learn it. So I'd try to learn 2 or 3 songs a week. And after a year or two, I had pretty good repertoire.
Yeah.
I was in pretty good shape at that point.
I see you served in Korea in the service.
Yeah. I was there from 51 to 53.
Yeah.
I was in Korea for all of 52, that is.
Yeah.
I was a radio operator and went over there and did radio. And when I got out, I sat home. It was like March of 53. And I'm sitting home and I'm not knowing what to do with myself. And the phone rings. And, hello? Johnny, this is Bobby Hackett. Very serious. I thought, Bobby Hackett, oh my God, I loved him. I mean, he was somebody I admired all my life. His knowledge of music, his knowledge of chords and everything was very intimidating to me. However, he said, what are you doing? I said, not very much. I just got out. He says, I know, I've been keeping track of you, that you were in the service. He knew my dad. My dad worked in Cromwell Drugstore in the RCA building, and NBC Studios were upstairs, and these guys would come down and say, how's Johnny doing? What do you hear from him? Blah, 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 and all this. Bobby says, I know you're back. He says, I think you should come with me. I'm going on tour. I says, gee, Bobby, I don't know. You know, I've been played for 2 years. I'm out of shape. And he says, I'll tell you what, meet me at Lou Terrassi's. Lou Terrassi's was a club on 47th Street, I think 47th or 48th, off of Broadway. And I said, I can be there in an hour. He said, okay, I'll meet you there. Bobby talked like a tough Bostonite, although he was from Providence. So I showed up, and he said, play something. There was a piano there and everything. And I sat down, and I started to play a little something. The next thing I know, there's a bass player playing with me. I look up, it's Leo Guarneri, Johnny Guarneri's brother.
Oh.
And he was working there on a steady basis, happened to be passing by. And so he said, oh, thank God. I played a couple of things, and I finished, and I got off there, and Bobby said, I think you should come with me. I said, geez, Bobby, you sure? He says, you did a couple of things wrong on this song, and blah, 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 but we can straighten that out. Don't worry about it. And sure enough, I went with him. We played the Grand View Inn. We played the Blue Note in Chicago. We played some great rooms. And while we're playing, Bobby is teaching me songs and instructing me, don't do that, change this, do that, C7, concentrate, pay attention. Go. But I'm learning, man. I'm learning so much. And he was so patient and great. It was only a quartet. Buzzy was on drums. I didn't know Buzzy. That's when I first met Buzzy. I played with him later at Condon's. This is 53. God, we're jumping around a lot.
That's all right. That's all right.
Maybe you can add it.
Of course, Bobby was, he knew, as you said, he knew chords really. He played guitar, too.
Oh, yes.
So he really knew his harmony.
Yeah, he did. That's very true. Yeah. He's one of the few in those days that did, of the horn players. Horn players, most of them played by instinct, by ear, by hearing. But Bobby knew his changes. And some of these other guys just played, I mean, they did just as well in a lot of cases. But Bobby's harmonies were so great. He knew how, he'd sometimes hit that third on the bottom and just go the rest of the chord up. He's a great teacher. Great influence.
Great sound, too. Right?
Oh, Jesus, man, he was beautiful. We're doing a concert next month in Gainesville, a tribute to Bobby. So it should be fun.
Wow. So you've kind of now establishing yourself as a jazz piano player, and I'm curious what influence the current pop trends at that time would have on what you guys needed to play on a job. Was there any?
Pop meaning what?
I guess I'm meaning things like that would be on the AM radio at the time, either the beginnings of rock and roll. I guess I'm moving more later into the 50s, or how much is that Doggy in the Window kind of things that were hits back then. Did they have any influence?
Probably not. They probably pushed me into the direction of real jazz.
Okay.
And said, get that away from me, Doggy in the Window. There was, well, you turn the radio on and you'd hear Doggy in the Window, and the next thing would be a Benny Goodman a tune, or a Tommy Dorsey, a big band thing, or some small group. You'd hear that they mixed it up quite a bit. It wasn't so personal now as
yeah, so that was really part of the pop music, a popular...
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Goodman and some of those things. You'd hear a trio, and you'd listen to Make Believe Ballroom and some of those shows. William B. Williams, especially in New York, WNEW had a lot of that stuff going on. And later on, Fred Robbins took over and was playing mostly jazz.
I see. So you didn't really have to search the dial to find jazz-oriented music like you do now?
Well, there wasn't anything like a real jazz show where it was all jazz. I don't think there was. It might have been Fred Robbins might have been one of the first to put a lot of jazz together, compile it in one section, one half-hour thing or an hour program.
Were you a member of the Musicians Union at this time?
Yeah, I joined when I was 18. And it was a joke almost. I got in there and they said, they handed me a piece of music, which was Schubert's Serenade, which I'd played with 5 years earlier. I sat down, I went, dun, 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 boom, boom. That's all right. Okay, that's enough. So I could read whatever was put there. It was kind of silly.
You were expecting like
give me the money and
Yeah,
pay your dues, and,
right.
and you're a member. Joke.
Wow. Have they ever come to bat for you over the years?
No.
Okay. Enough said.
For what? For what? I don't
Right,
know.
I don't know.
I wouldn't know what to complain about. You know?
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about the Jackie Gleason show and how that came about.
Oh, well, when I was at Nick's with Phil Napoleon in '54, a lot of celebrities used to come in. People would come in and dig the music and stay until, God, we went until 4 o'clock in the morning in those days, and we'd had an audience on for that last set. We'd have at least 24 people there, sitting around the bar waiting. Guess they had to go to work in the morning, but the music was entrancing to them.
Wow.
And this one night, Jackie came in with an entourage and sat and listened to the band and loved the band, Phil Napoleon's band. Phil Napoleon, I might have misled you in some way. I said it was kind of tight and two-beat and all that, but it was really a very good band, very clean and some great players. Jackie loved that. He loved the music. So he was doing his, starting the Honeymooners. And he hired us as a unit to play for the warm-ups. To play the warm-ups, like we'd play a half hour before the show was to start, as the people would come in and they'd sit in the audience, and we'd play about a half hour. And then we'd take a break, and the announcer would come out and explain what's going to go on with the show. And then we'd come up, we'd do another tune. And then the show was ready to start. And then we would play between scene changes and play them off on the end. And they had the front row set for us, so that when we finished playing, we'd just sit down right there. And here we watched all those original Honeymooners being done live. I mean, I see them and I hear us laughing. I hear Phil Napoleon had a very infectious laugh, and every once in a while, I say, "Oh God, there's Phil." Maybe he's trying to score brownie points with Jackie. I don't know what the hell. Laughing harder than usual. I shouldn't say that.
That's funny.
But we did that for 2 years. So we caught all those Honeymooner things. I mean, it was just classic stuff.
Gee.
And it was so great. And that lasted for 2 years. And then several years later, let's see, that was 55. Then in 65, I got a call from, I'm jumping again, but Jackie had the show in Miami, the American Scene magazine, I think it was called, an hour variety show. And I got a call from Phil Napoleon again. He says, "What are you doing at this point?" I said, "Nothing." He says, "Come on down. I've got the Gleason show. I've got the racetrack on Saturdays. And we've got a steady gig in the Roney Plaza Hotel, 6 nights a week." I said, "Send me a ticket." And it was snowing. It was January. It was snowing in New York and horrible and freezing, and I had no work. And he says, "The temperature here is 78 degrees. Send me a ticket." I'll be right down.
Wow.
And I worked for the Gleason show for another 2 years on that. I never worked directly for Gleason, but worked for
on staff.
for Phil Napoleon, and we played all his parties. We played the train ride down. He used to have a train from. It would start out with a party at Toots Shores in New York, and then we'd be transported to a train. Gleason had his own train, and we'd go down to Miami by train, and play on the train.
Yeah.
And party it up. It was just one big party with all the June Taylor dances, and Art Carney and Frank Fontaine and all that whole bunch. Sheila McRae.
Oh, Frank Fontaine. I haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah.
He was a great drunk, wasn't he?
Oh Jesus. Yeah.
In watching those Honeymooner shows, did they ever have moments where things went wrong, Or were you aware of them? If maybe
They rarely did 2 takes on something, unless something went drastically wrong, then they might stop it. And we'd get up and play, and they'd make some changes or reset themselves, but hardly ever. I remember one time in Miami, after the original honeymoon, they did a thing and Jackie was supposed to crash into a brick wall. And he did. Something happened and he went crashing into this wall and he broke either his wrist or his ankle. I forget what it was, but he broke something, but he went on and carried on and finished the whole night. And he wasn't going to take a break for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's quite a guy.
Wow. Your day-to-day business of making a career in music has mostly been of your own initiative. Did you ever have an agent or a manager or doing any of that stuff?
No, never.
Uh-huh.
Never. It's, I don't know why. No one's ever approached me, and I've never approached anyone.
Yeah.
It's been okay for me. I telephone.
Yeah.
Call me by rep, I suppose. You know, it's been good that way. I'm really fortunate in that respect.
Yeah. And you've never had to revert to an office type?
Not after that first one.
Yeah.
No, never have.
That's great.
Never did anything else, man.
That's good.
I was very lucky there. Yeah.
What prompted you to move to the West Coast?
Well, after I moved down to Miami in '65, I was there for, got married, and had a couple of kids in the '70s. Daughter was born in '72 and a son in '77. In '79, the bottom fell out of the business. I did have a hotel job. That's another thing. I did work in a hotel in Miami. That was pretty steady, and that was very good for me.
Yeah.
Financially, it set me up pretty good. But the bottom fell out of the business in Miami too. Condominiums became the big word, the big thing. People became residents instead of tourists. And it just shot the music business. The hotel business was shot, and so hence the music business too. So it was time to leave. There's always a time when you have to make a move, and I did that, and decided it was either come back to New York. I tried a year in New York. It was okay. In '78, it wasn't bad, but I'd never been to the West Coast. And a couple of friends of mine had moved out there. So in '79, we moved to the West Coast, Los Angeles. And was there until '93, another 14 years. 14 years in Miami, 14 years in Los Angeles. And that was great for me. I really had some good fans and good jazz lovers there. And I got to play with a whole bunch of musicians I had never played with before, the West Coast guys.
Yeah.
Nick Fatul, Eddie Miller, Dick Cathcart, Bob Havens, Abe Lincoln. Well, just to name a few. Yeah. I can name several more. I can't think of them offhand. But it was good, and then I developed a following. I even had a steady gig there. I had a 5-year stint at a club called Gatsby's, which was owned by the same guy who had the Gatsby's in New York, Bill Rosen. His wife happened to be Helen Greco, who was the vocalist and singer with Spike Jones for years. And she and her husband ran this place called Gatsby's. And I managed to get a steady job there for 5 years, just solo piano. It was great. All the celebrities would come in and people would come in. And I'm a movie nut, so I got to know all these people. And I got to know all the character actors by name. And they were always shocked that someone would know who they were. I mean, some of the small guys around. Oh, yeah, Charlie Lane. Yeah, I know you, Charlie. Yeah, things like that. Wow. And I recall their commercials or certain lines that they did in the movies. And
they like that kind of stuff.
Oh, they ate it up. And a lot of different experiences happened there,
Uh-huh.
which I could recall. But
Any studio work for you out
yeah,
there?
I do occasionally.
Yeah.
I'd get a call to do something special. I wasn't a studio player, and I didn't really like it. I didn't like the competition there. I didn't like the politics of it. So I decided to steer clear of that. And there was enough jazz playing. There were a lot of good jazz clubs in those days in Los Angeles. There's Pasquale's, Dante's, Alfonso's, Carmelo's, all Italian joints.
Yeah.
All Italian places, and they were really good. I mean, you'd play there several of those several times a week. The only thing wrong with that was they never paid too much.
Oh.
So you'd have to do special things to really make some good money. And occasionally a club date. Club dates paid well,
Yeah.
but I try to steer clear of that too, as I do here.
Define for someone who might be watching this, who doesn't know what club date means.
A club date is a regular job where you'll play for an audience that doesn't care what you're doing. If you're playing a wedding, nobody cares who the band is. If you're playing a dance, no one really cares what the band is. That's one of those.
Yeah,
I don't
I
care.
know. It's funny when you think about you get paid more in the jobs where people don't care what you're doing.
Exactly. Isn't it ironic?
Wow. What do you think of the state of jazz these days?
Well, it's strange because there's such separation between the styles. When I grew up in New York, there was one style of playing. The styles were kind of bebop and swing were combining in a way. And there was such mixture of players and musicians that you were able to function well enough with the next player, even though he might have been a different style. It was still close enough, and as long as it swung, that was the important thing, if it swung, to me anyway, and don't mean a thing. And today, there's so many different styles of jazz. There's no real, I hear some of the fusion players and some of the avant-garde players putting this music down that we're playing here, which comes from the swing era,
Yeah.
mainstream jazz. And as if to say there's nothing new being created in mainstream jazz. We've got to do something more creative. It's got to be original. It's got to be different. Always strive for different. Well, we strive for different things, different phrasing, different solos. I try never to play the same solo on a particular song. And so I hear all these other players do that. And there are some great players at this festival and at the festivals that we usually wind up with. I challenge anybody to be as good as some of these players down here. I don't care what style is. To me, jazz should be a happy, peaceful thing. It should not be an angry jazz form. And I hear a lot of the anger coming out in some of this other music. I can try to appreciate it, and I do appreciate some of it. And I try to find some qualities, some good things in it, but I always have to come back to this style to really find satisfaction and say, this is where it's at, really. This is my kind of music. I love it, I enjoy it, and I'm constantly trying to be creative.
When I look at the players that excel at this kind of music, I don't know what we want to call it, but I guess classic or mainstream.
Mainstream, swing.
Yeah.
Swing, jazz.
I don't see many young black players coming up. Now, there seems to be a lot of younger white guys who are a generation below you, I guess,
Yeah.
that are embracing the style. And I'm wondering why.
It's very sad. It's very sad. I'm very sorry to hear that because, as I was saying, years ago when I played this music, I was a young kid. And there were a lot of young kids. It was like Johnny Windhurst, Bob Wilber, Kenny DeVerne, the young crop of musicians playing. And we'd be playing with mixed bands like crazy. I mean, I was on a band once where I was the only white kid in the band. It was Jonah Jones on trumpet, Coleman Hawkins on tenor, Benny Green on trombone, Joe Jones on drums, various bass players, Gene Ramey maybe on bass, myself, the young white hope. And it was a great education. And then most of the bands were always mixed. Condon always had a mixed band. And it was delightful. It was a lot of fun to play. And you got to learn with each other. We drink from the same jugs and smoke the same cigarettes.
Yeah.
And do all that stuff. I mean, it was a camaraderie there. I think it has something to do with the style, the times. This music relates to a time when things were rough for the black person, not necessarily the black musician, but the black person in the civil rights. This would be pre-civil rights, I guess. And I think they resent the style of the music, and they just don't want to have anything part of it. It kind of reminds them of. This is just my own sermons.
It's a.
You know.
I think it's a good.
I'm surmising this myself
Yeah.
on my own. I don't know whether I'm right or wrong. I think it is. I've thought about it, and I think it's sad because like you say, I just don't see too many black players playing this style of music. I can't think of any. I mean, I see some of the old timers that are still around, like Joe Wilder, and Jackie Williams. Of course, Milt Hinton just passed away, but he was part of it. I played with him back when I was in the 50s.
Yeah.
And I wish there were more. John Lamb I played with here with Buster Cooper the other day. And it was great to see a mixed band there. I was delighted. And
Yeah.
so, you know.
Well, I think it was well said. Your thoughts anyway. What everyone has particular memories of Milt Hinton. Do you have any specific things?
Well, I first played with him, and back then we did some recording for Grand Award, the Command label with Pee Wee Irwin. And then I didn't see him for a while, and then we started growing with him in the circuit. I'll never forget one time we were playing a particular set, and sometimes there's a little too much chatter on the bandstand. And I was playing, and all of a sudden I hear, shh. And I look up. I was playing a solo at this time, and the two guys chatting over there. And they looked up, and I looked up too. I'm saying, what the hell's going on? And he says, the man's playing. Be quiet. And you heard silence from that point on. So that's one of the great memories I have from Milt. I appreciated that so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was, the little bit I got to know him, I was amazed by just what you pegged there, that he was a greatest man. He was always happy. He was always, but there was a point where he is business. You know, this is a business.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
and give it the respect
Oh,
it's
yes.
due.
Yeah. Have fun, but this is a business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of a kind, man. I really loved him.
Do you sit at a piano when you write?
I might try some harmonies. You know, if you're writing for four horns, you might want to get the best harmony and open it up a little bit. And I'll do that, and some passing tones, and then make sure that it jibes. A lot of it I do from my head originally, and then I'll try it at the piano and make some changes as I go along. But the ideas come from up here. You know,
Do you write all your own parts out and all that?
I write it.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm a stickler for neatness. You know, and I've been handed so much music that has been scribbled.
Yeah.
And say, here, play this, and you got to. If you can't interpret the music, you're not going to be able to play it. So I make sure that I write it clear enough that it's legible and understandable. And then if it's not played correctly, it's their fault.
That's good. You don't want to give many excuses.
Yeah, right. No. In fact, later on tomorrow, I think we have a set with the Swing 7 at 5 o'clock.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Glad you told me that.
You got a lot of new stuff there that's on the new CD.
Cool.
And we're not going to rehearse.
Yeah.
Just going to throw it at him. In fact, I finished the chart yesterday afternoon, was it? No, yesterday morning, before I came here.
All right.
I finished it out, I copied it, and we're going to play it.
That's good.
Never been
Yes.
played before.
A
Duke Ellington.
premier performance.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Duke
that's great.
Ellington, Stompy Jones.
All right. I'm sending greetings from Cynthia Wilcox, Spiegel's daughter.
Oh, goodness.
So you probably one of the you played with him a number of times. Yes?
He used to come into Nick's back in the 50s, the early
Yeah.
50s. Spiegel used to come in and sit in, and Cindy would be with him. In fact, there was a little thing going there with Spiegel and Phil Napoleon trying to match me and Cindy and Cynthia
Oh,
together.
really?
Yeah, at one time.
No kidding.
We're close to the same age. I think she's a little younger.
All right.
But it never materialized. She was living upstate New York anyway.
Right.
And she's adorable. I like her very much. She's a good gal.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time today.
Oh, man,
I'll be,
it was great, Mark. You made it very easy.
Good, and I'll be waiting to hear that chart this afternoon. See how it goes.
No, it's not today. Tomorrow afternoon.
All right.
Swing 7, we got about 40 minutes to play, and there's a lot of stuff on there. And the new chart, the Stompy Jones.
Great.
And you take care, man.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
a lot. Appreciate it.